speak the truth unfiltered. I had a super interesting chat with a Boyo recently who told me that he was inspired at one point to just say whatever came into his mind without filtering it, without cutting it off, without stopping it. Now, what fascinated me about this story was this Boyo just obeyed this voice. He tried to bring it forward. He tried to give this voice the floor and say, you speak for me, in some sense. He allowed it to channel through him and allowed himself to get possessed by it, in some sense. And what happened is that brought him to insanity. It actually brought him to a place of madness, and everybody was extremely worried about him. And I wonder, what would happen if I did that or you did that? Because the reason why we don't do that is because we're terrified of the idea of barely letting it say what it thinks at all. Like when you're with someone and they're talking in the world, or they're saying some bullshit that you don't agree with, you hold back. You say, oh no, I'm not gonna voice my opinion. I'm just gonna say what I think. Or you're not gonna let that inner monologue just like comment all the time. But in some sense, if you did, where would that take you? Because don't you think that that's more truthful, that inner voice, and what you actually say to the world sometimes is this kind of modulated and culled version of that, the happy, the tame version, the acceptable version. You hold back a lot. You don't let that monster out. And so what I notice is that the reason why we do not just give in to this is largely fear. Yet something in us wants something, this cricket, this inner voice, this conscience has. We want something out of that. We wish we could say things with this divinely empowered that this oomph to it. You know, we could wish our words came out with more punch. We sometimes wish we knew what to say. We sometimes wish that we weren't stifled. We're in those situations where we run out of things to say, yet always this inner voice is chattering away. And we'd have this infinite resource if we just gave ourselves over to that beast, in some sense. And why do we hold back? And we do hold back because of fear. We hold back because of fear of where it will bring us. And that's what's fascinating. We don't really know where that will bring us, but we know not to do it for some reason. And so this man said, I'm gonna just fucking do it. I'm just gonna go for it. This Boyo was like, I'm gonna just let this thing rip and see what happens. And it brought him to crazy places. And it made me wonder, is it correct to just tell the truth without any filter whatsoever? Because it does bring you to that extremity where you're faced with like practically insanity. And people are like, I need drugs, I need this to get in touch with the divine, I wish my life was more meaningful. It's like, why don't you just say everything that comes into your head without trying to hold back at all and see how meaningful your life gets? Pretty quickly you'll find yourself in the absolute peak of meaning. That's fascinating to think that is always there inside our heads, and we refuse to access it in some sense. So this Boyo, he went for it. And he made me realize that it's like it will bring you to hell straight away. We don't have touch of that conscience. It doesn't feel like it's strong. We don't feel we have this clean, pure voice that's just ripping out our ideas. And so when we call forth and just give ourselves over to it, it like takes over and just brings us in this crazy place. It makes us face our demons, all those things that we refuse to say suddenly, and those people who built those relationships off those lies that they didn't think we had any critical ideas about them. Suddenly they feel them with full force, and they're like, how dare you say that? But you're sort of like, well, this is the truth. This is what I've always thought. But of course they've never heard that before, and so it hits hard. And he did it. And I was wondering, is it correct? Is it right to do that? Is that what we should all aspire to do at some point? Is just go for it and just say absolutely everything that comes to our mind and just spill it all out. And that will bring us to the divine, unity with the divine. It will create that presence of God within us. It will add gravitas to our voice. We will know that everything we say has this oomph of truth. And you craft meaning to your words, and then from there that crafts your mind, and from there that crafts a personality, which is what we are all seeking at the end of the day. And I thought about that, and then I thought, is there any way I can niggle around this? I wonder, is it, because considering where it brings you, perhaps there's a way to be tactile about it. And this could just be me rationalizing to try escape the reality that I'm terrified of doing it as well. And I was wondering, is it smart to understand that your words are not the whole picture there? Like that inner voice, that conscience, if you want, that cricket on your shoulder, that is in some sense a guide, but it's not made of words per se. Like, just speaking the truth completely is not necessarily being raw correctly. Like, there is also something intuitive about the world that you have to feel, and you have to catch the vibe, and you have to learn how to do things in a different way. Now, of course, that doesn't mean you're allowed to escape that. You do have to say the truth as much as you can, but there's almost like this other side to it. There's this other angle that you need to balance, which is understanding people and understanding the felt side of that. Because this Boyo said that it was quite easy for him to lie in his bed and just be like, say what's coming to his head and all that, and that was fine. But when he suddenly became in the presence of other people and started playing this game, he would get struck with like a lightning bolt of fear, because then this is where the consequences become real, and real beyond belief. And so his speech became dangerous to him, and he could feel it, and he was afraid. And when he'd do it to people, it was almost horrifying for them. They're like, whoa, too much truth, too intense, just trying to have a cup of tea here, and you're giving me hit me with like the divinity of absolute truth. And so what are you supposed to do there? What are you supposed to do there? And I was thinking about it like the way you deal with a woman in some sense. You meet her on a date, and like everybody knows where you're there. And the two of you know you're there because you want romance out of it. But in some sense, that's not the way to go about it. You're not supposed to sit there and be like, this is what I want, and I want it now, and articulate it, because that ruins what it's all about. You're supposed to somehow play, and it's almost like you're never supposed to say it, but you're always supposed to make it felt in some sense. You know, it's something that's intuitive, and sometimes it's the words that you don't say, the things that you don't say, the expressions, the sub-communicated ideas and whatnot. And it made me realize that there is a refinement side to this that's super important, and it's almost like the blending between a masculine ideal like words, conscience, truth, and vocalizing stuff, and a more feminine mode of understanding, which is felt, which is intuned in experience in that way, and is the correct way to do this about unifying these two things. So in some sense, releasing them, but then using these two forces, the truth and the feeling, and balancing them together, understanding that there's like subtleties to all this and whatnot. And so that fascinated me, because I was thinking about this Boyo, like, what are you supposed to say? Are you supposed to say to him, oh, just don't tell the truth like that? Are you crazy? Are you crazy? You're supposed to say, you can't do that, because that's kind of cuckoldry. Like, this is a good thing in some sense. It's allowing the monster out, but then you have to tame it in somehow. And is that taming in that feminizing energy where you say, you know, communicating with people is not all about the words, and it isn't. And so telling truthful words isn't all about communicating clearly. It's almost like you need to learn how to express yourself in other ways, and learn how to be sophisticated. And that teaches you a lot about, like, it's not what you say, but it's how you say it in some sense can be a form of the truth. So hopefully I'm not trying to dance around it and get myself out of that little conundrum that throws up, being like, what would you do if you told the absolute truth? But nonetheless, I think there is value in what I was saying, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. Everything about this is hidden behind fear. The reason why we don't speak the truth is because we're afraid of the consequences. The reason why we don't just give in that magical voice in the back of our head is because we're terrified of what it would mean when we meet someone to have to actually do that. And so it's often very, very useful to speak to people like myself and like Jimmy Boyo who get the nuance and the craziness of the psychology of these experiences around fear and what they might mean. And then we like to get people in like Boyos and have a chat with them and teach them how to make sense of this stuff, so we can these great opportunities, this fear and these behaviors such as building your conscience can be used to craft yourself a better mind, a better personality, and which generally creates the core thing that is about improving your life, which is personality, and it's all about unlocking these mental resources within. So if you would like to have a chat with us, pop down to the email below, hit boyoalert@gmail.com, and we're happy to do it for free for the first session. By all means, if you want to get in on this, hit us up. We'd be delighted to hear from you and hear your mad stories and tell us what's going on, and we'll get you all juicy and fearless. So talk to you later, people. Thank you very much for your time, and bye-bye.